Ethan Miller pushed his cleaning cart down yet another silent corridor of Nexus Station, the wheels squeaking faintly against the polished floor. He wiped his forehead with the back of his arm, sweat smearing into the collar of his yellow maintenance uniform. 34 years old, once a promising engineer on Earth, now just another laborer in orbit around a gas giant called Theris. It wasn't the life he had imagined. He had learned to keep his head down, scrub, mop, disinfect, repeat. Wow. The station's 17 species of residents moved past him as though he were invisible. Tonight was supposed to be no different. Section 42B, the datapad had chirped. Biohazard cleanup. The access panel should have resisted him. Maintenance never crossed into restricted research. But when Ethan swiped his badge, the lock blinked. Red, then chimed an override. Emergency clearance granted. Containment breach detected. He frowned. That wasn't standard protocol. Hesitation gnawed at him, but years of orders and obedience had conditioned him to comply. The door slid open, and instead of a messy spill or waste disposal disaster, he stepped into a pristine laboratory humming with quiet blue light. Ethan froze at the threshold. The place didn't belong anywhere near his cleaning routes. Rows of V'ing. Advanced equipment gleamed in silence, every surface sterile, clinical. At the center of the chamber rose a cylindrical tank filled with fluid that glowed faintly, the color of bioluminescence glimpsed in deep oceans. Something floated inside. He edged closer, mop forgotten in his grip. A severed hand, pale blue skin, stretched over delicate bone structure, 5 slender fingers ending in nails that shimmered faintly. The hand twitched. Ethan stumbled back, heart hammering against his ribs. He barely caught his cart before it toppled over. The liquid stirred, bubbling violently as the tank system shrieked with sudden alarms. Ethan's eyes widened as the impossible unfolded. Tissue formed, cells multiplying at speeds his rational mind refused to comprehend. Bones extended, muscles knitted across them, veins and skin layering in surreal precision. The hand sprouted an arm, a shoulder, a torso, each piece materializing in grotesque yet awe-inspiring sequence. Within minutes, a whole body floated inside. The tank slender, unmistakably female in form, her pale blue skin almost translucent under the liquid light. White strands of hair unfurled around her face like threads of moonlight. Delicate features carved themselves into existence. High cheekbones, a narrow nose, lips tinted with a strange silver blue. Her eyelids fluttered as if testing life. Then, with a surge of energy that rattled the room, the tank drained. Fluid gushed away, panels retracting, leaving her curled on the platform like a newborn. Ethan's breath stuck in his throat. She was alive. Her chest heaved as she dragged in a first desperate gasp of air. Her eyes snapped open electric blue, so bright they seemed to burn. She trembled, panicked, arms wrapping around herself in instinctive terror. Her gaze darted across the lab, uncomprehending, until it found him. She clung to that sight, the mop still in his hand, the yellow uniform, the human standing frozen. Who? Her voice rasped raw, her throat untested. She reached toward him with a trembling hand. Who are you? What is this place? Ethan blinked, forcing himself to move. She wasn't a monster, wasn't a science project. She was someone terrified, vulnerable. He grabbed a sterile sheet from a nearby trolley and approached slowly. My name's Ethan, he said gently, draping it over her shivering form. I'm just maintenance, a janitor. You're on Nexus Station. She clutched the sheet around her, her breath shuddering. The strength in her fingers startled him when she gripped his hand. Her skin was warm, unexpectedly warm. Nexus? Her eyes widened in horror. That's not possible. Nexus was destroyed in the Cygnus conflict. Ethan shook his head. The war ended 3 years ago. Nexus was rebuilt. Her lips parted, the words slow, heavy with dread. 3 years. I've been gone for 3 years? You weren't gone, Ethan said quietly, gesturing to the empty regeneration tank. You were just a hand. I saw it. You've been rebuilt. Her eyes glistened, disbelief warring with comprehension. She looked down at her body, flexing her long fingers as though testing reality. The restoration technology. It worked, she whispered, voice gaining strength. My name is Luara. I was a researcher here before the explosion. Ethan squeezed her hand gently, grounding her. A janitor who had come in to mop floors was suddenly staring at a woman reborn, pulled out of death itself, and now clinging to him as though his face was the only anchor she had left in the universe. And as her electric blue eyes locked with his, Ethan felt something shift. His ordinary life had just been shattered, and nothing would ever be the same. Ethan's instincts screamed at him to get Luara to the infirmary, to hand her over to someone with real medical training, but the terror in her eyes stopped him cold. She clutched his hand as though letting go would mean falling back into oblivion. The laboratory door hissed open before he could decide. Ethan's body moved without thought. He pulled Luara behind him, raising the mop like a makeshift spear. A tall figure entered, a spindly alien with copper-toned skin, long limbs, and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond. The white coat draped over his narrow frame, or silver insignia of senior research rank. The alien froze, all 4 eyes widening. At once at the sight of the drained tank, and the blue-skinned woman clinging to a human janitor. By the void, he breathed, Luara. Her grip tightened painfully on Ethan's arm. Dr. Cullen? Her voice was laced with both relief and suspicion. Cullen sealed the door quickly, engaging the manual lock. You're alive. It worked. He stepped forward, but stopped when Ethan jabbed the mop toward his chest. Stay back, Ethan warned, the mop trembling slightly in his grip. She says someone tried to kill her. You want to explain that? Cullen's upper eyes blinked rapidly, an alien tell. Of stress Ethan had learned during months of menial work around their kind. The scientist's voice dropped to an urgent whisper. She's right, and if they discover she survived, they'll kill her again. Ventec controls this research now. They've twisted it into something it was never meant to be. Ventec? Ethan repeated darkly. The corporation ran half the station's infrastructure power, food distribution, even maintenance contracts. His badge bore their logo. Yes, Cullen confirmed. And their security systems will already have registered the tank's activation. They're coming. Luara tried to stand, but her legs betrayed her, buckling beneath the unfamiliar weight. Ethan caught her instinctively, his arm slipping around her slender waist. She was warm, softer than her pale blue skin suggested, her body trembling with every attempt to balance. I've got you, he murmured, holding her steady dot. Her electric blue eyes met his, and something sparked between them, fragile, but real. Thank you, she whispered, her voice steadier now. Cullen moved quickly, pulling a gray jumpsuit from a storage cabinet. Put this on. We can't risk you being recognized. Ethan, help her. He began scooping glowing data crystals into a small case with frantic precision. We must move, now. Ethan guided Luara into the jumpsuit, turning his eyes aside as she fumbled with the unfamiliar fabric. Her fingers brushed his hand deliberately, lingering longer than necessary. It was awkward and intimate all at once, and Ethan had to remind himself that seconds mattered. When she was dressed, Cullen snapped the case shut. My quarters are in the research sector. We'll hide there while I arrange transport. Off station? Ethan frowned. I can't just leave. I've got a contract. Your contract won't matter if Ventec decides you're a liability, Cullen interrupted. You've seen too much already. You're part of this now, human. Luara's hand found Ethan's arm again, her touch lingering. "I'm sorry to have dragged you into this. But he's right. He'll silence anyone connected to me." Her words sent a chill down Ethan's spine. A janitor who should have been invisible now stood between a resurrected scientist and one of the most powerful corporations in the system. Colin cracked the door just enough to peer into the corridor. "We'll use your cart as cover. She looks ill, Ethan. Push it as though you're taking her to medical. Speak loudly." Ventec's drones are stupid, but thorough. Minutes later, Ethan was rolling his cart through a busy junction. Luara leaned against it as though weak with sickness, Callan walking briskly beside them with the air of an irritated doctor. A patrol drone hovered near, its lens sweeping over them. "Food poisoning," Callan said loudly, pitching his voice with annoyance. "Humans and their fragile digestive systems. I'm escorting this one to medbay." The drone scanned for 3/10 seconds, then floated away. Ethan released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "That was close," he muttered. "Closer than you think," Luara whispered, her face inches from his as they kept up the charade. Her electric gaze held him, too near for comfort, and yet strangely reassuring. "But I'm glad you're with me, Ethan. You make me feel grounded." Her scent filled his lungs, something like ozone after a storm mixed with alien blossoms. He almost forgot where they were until Callan hissed, "Checkpoint ahead. Stay in character." Ethan tightened his grip on the cart. He had started this night as a janitor. Now, with only a mop in his nerve, he was protecting a woman who shouldn't even exist. And as her hand brushed his beneath the cart's handle, he realized there was no going back. The corridor ahead widened into a bright security checkpoint, its walls lined with scanners and armed personnel from half a dozen species. Ethan's pulse quickened. This was the choke point where the act would either hold or shatter. Callan leaned closer, his voice low and urgent. "Remember, she's sick. You're irritated. I'm the doctor. Don't improvise unless you must." Ethan nodded, though his jaw was tight. Improvisation was all he'd been doing since stepping through that damned lab door. They reached the scanner arch. A pair of Ventec security officers in sleek gray armor blocked their way, four-eyed reptilian types whose kind Ethan had only ever seen on guard duty. Their weapons weren't drawn, but the way their clawed fingers hovered near the triggers told Ethan they'd happily pull them. "Destination?" one officer rasped, his translator crackling. "Medical bay," Callan replied smoothly. "Foodborne. Pathogen, human subject. I'll file the incident report after treatment." The officer's eyes narrowed at Luara slumped against the cart. She gave a convincing cough, her body trembling. Ethan bent protectively over her, putting himself between her and the alien stare without thinking. "Humans," the guard muttered with disdain. "Always fragile." He gestured lazily to the scanner arch. "Proceed." They rolled through. The scanner hummed, a red light flashing briefly as it swept over Luara. Ethan's stomach dropped. The guard frowned, tapping his wrist console. "Unregistered. Biosignature detected." Cowan cursed under his breath. Ethan's grip tightened on the mop handle hidden in the cart. He could feel Luara's hand slip into his, her fingers icy despite the glow of her blue skin. "I told you, the human is ill," Callan said quickly. "Digestive distress can cause irregular biosigns. Your scanner is oversensitive." The reptilian's eyes narrowed further. Irregular or unauthorized? His partner reached for his weapon. Ethan acted before fear could paralyze him. He knocked the mop bucket deliberately, spilling cleanser across the floor. Foam spread fast, the acrid chemicals stinging their nostrils. The guards hissed in alarm, stepping back to avoid the slick. Sorry, Ethan blurted, shoving the cart forward through the arch as though panicked by his own clumsiness. Callan seized the moment, snapping at the guards with all the haughty superiority of a senior researcher. Idiots contain that before it corrodes your boots. We'll be out of your way. The distraction worked. By the time the guard shouted after them, the trio had vanished down a side corridor. They ducked into a dim maintenance shaft, the door hissing shut behind them. Ethan's chest heaved with adrenaline. Luara pressed close to him, her body trembling, her bright eyes wide in the gloom. That was reckless, Callan snapped, though his voice held grudging respect. You nearly got us detained. It worked, didn't it? Ethan shot back, wiping sweat from his brow. His heart still pounded, but the feel of Luara's hand in his lingered like an anchor in the storm. Callan sighed, glancing up and down. The narrow shaft. My quarters are compromised. Ventek was faster than I anticipated. They've already searched them. Then where? Ethan asked. The scientist's eyes settled on him, calculating. Somewhere no one would think to look. Somewhere invisible. Ethan swallowed, realizing what that meant before he even spoke. My place. Maintenance level. No one pays attention to janitors. Luara's fingers tightened on his arm, as though she'd already known his answer. With you, she said softly. Callan gave a curt nod. Then lead the way. But understand this, human. From this point forward, there is no turning back. Ethan looked down at Luara, her luminous eyes locked on his, and felt the weight of it all pressing in. He had started this night as a man invisible. Now, with one choice, he was stepping into a storm that would paint a target on his back forever. And yet, with her hand in his, the decision didn't feel like a burden. It felt inevitable. Ethan's quarters were little more than a box tucked into the bowels of Nexus Station. A narrow bed shoved against the wall, a desk that doubled as a food prep surface, a sink that dripped when the filters clogged. Pipes rattled overhead, condensation dripping onto the dull metal floor. It was no place for anyone important, which was exactly why it was the safest place on the station. He keyed open the door, ushering Luara and Dr. Callan inside. The space felt even smaller with the three of them crammed together. Luara's pale blue form wrapped in the oversized jumpsuit, making the room look less like a refuge and more like a cage. Cozy, she said softly, her voice carrying the faintest edge of humor. It's secure, Callan corrected, dropping heavily into the only chair and pulling up Ethan's terminal with swift, spindly fingers. If Ventek swept my quarters already, they'll be looking everywhere else high value. Nobody bothers with the maintenance wing. It smells of solvent and failure. Ethan bristled, but bit back his retort. Failure had been his daily companion for years now. He busied himself rummaging through his meager supplies, protein bars, a chipped water flask, a medkit with more tape than medicine. He laid them out on the bed, feeling useless. Luara sat down slowly, testing her legs. Her hair shimmered faintly in the low light, strands of white that looked almost alive. She watched him as though cataloging every movement. You're calm, she said after a long pause. Most beings would be panicking. You've seen things today that should not be possible. Ethan shrugged, leaning against the wall. Humans adapt. It's what we do best. Yesterday, I was scrubbing toilets. Today, I'm hiding a fugitive scientist. Tomorrow? Who knows? Her lips curved faintly, though her eyes betrayed something more fragile. That's why I studied your species, she whispered. Human DNA is unique. Most species evolve for one environment, one role. But you generalists, survivors. Your biology shifts, rewrites itself to endure. Ventek wanted that for their weapons program. Soldiers who heal as fast as they're wounded. Armies that never tire. Ethan's stomach tightened. And you refused. Her gaze dropped. I thought I could outwit them. Keep my research pure. They made sure I wouldn't. They killed me, or tried to. Her voice cracked, and she pressed her hand to her chest as if anchoring herself. Without thinking, Ethan crossed the room and sat beside her. The bed springs creaked under their combined. Wait. He laid a steady hand over hers. You're here. Whatever they tried, it didn't stick. She looked at him then, her electric blue eyes luminous in the dim room. The first face I saw when I woke was yours, she said softly. That matters. Her fingers curled around his, tracing the calluses that cleaning work and old engineering. Jobs had left behind. It's grounding, comforting. The room seemed to shrink further, the hum of the station receding. Her hand moved up, brushing his jaw with tentative curiosity, as though relearning what touch meant. Ethan's breath caught. He should pull back. She was alien, a stranger, and everything about this was impossible. But then she leaned in, lips brushing his. Tentative at first, then more certain, tasting, exploring. Her skin glowed faintly where it touched his, patterns of bioluminescence rippling down her neck like constellations stirred awake. Ethan responded instinctively, his hand slipping to her waist, pulling her closer. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Luara rested her forehead against his, whispering, "In my culture, this much contact is intimate." "I can stop," Ethan murmured, still holding her but ready to release. "No," she said quickly, almost desperately. Her hand remained on his cheek. "Don't. It makes me feel alive again." Across the room, Callan cleared his throat pointedly without looking up from the terminal. "Forgive me for interrupting your cultural exchange, but Ventec is already moving assets. Hunter drones. They'll track her bioelectric signature. They're coming." Ethan forced himself to pull back, though his hand lingered on hers. "Then we need a plan." Callan's 4 eyes flicked to them grimly. "We have one chance. A maintenance shuttle, Bay 4. But it will take a miracle to reach it alive." Luara's grip on Ethan's hand tightened. "Then we make our own miracle," she whispered. Her glowing gaze locked on his dot. The maintenance corridors of Nexus Station groaned around them, pipes rattling with recycled air, shadows stretched by flickering utility lights. Ethan guided Luara through the narrow passageways, Callan trailing behind with his case of stolen data crystals. Every few meters, the faint whir of distant drones echoed closer. Time was dissolving like water down a drain dot at the junction to corridor. B7. Callan stopped and gestured to a recessed panel set into the wall. "This is the least monitored access point. If Luara interfaces here, she can trigger a localized evacuation alert. That will temporarily elevate your clearance, Ethan, enough to access the shuttle bay." Ethan eyed the panel, then glanced at Luara. She stood taller than she had in his quarters, her posture steadier, though her luminous eyes betrayed tension. "What happens when you do this?" he asked. Her gaze met his without wavering. "The drones will detect me the moment I connect. I'll have minutes at most before they converge." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Too risky. We'll find another way." "There is no other way," Callan said sharply. "She does this, or we're all dead." Luara stepped closer to Ethan, her hand brushing his arm. "I was supposed to be dead already. This chance, it's not meant for hiding." Her voice softened. "I trust you to keep me alive long enough to finish." He wanted to argue, but the quiet certainty in her touch unraveled his protest. "Fine," he said, forcing the word out. "But I stay right here with you." She gave a small nod, then placed her palms against the panel. Immediately her skin began to glow, the intricate patterns beneath it pulsing like circuitry. Filaments of blue light extended from her fingertips, threading into the interface. Ethan watched, transfixed, as her eyes flared with the same bioluminescence. "I'm in," she whispered, her voice layered with a faint hum. Bypassing security protocols. Triggering emergency. Now. Sirens wailed in the distance. Red lights stuttered to life along the corridor walls. The station's AI voice boomed overhead. Warning. Evacuation protocol initiated. Sector B7. Compromised. Clearance upgraded. Colin confirmed, scanning his wrist display. The shuttle bay will recognize your badge. But we have to move. A metallic shriek cut him off. At the far end of the corridor, a hunter drone crawled into view, spindly legs scraping the walls, multiple sensor eyes glowing crimson. Contact. Ethan barked, instincts surging. He grabbed his mop, his ridiculous, battered mop, and swung it into the corridor like a staff, positioning himself between Luara and the machine. The drone scuttled forward with inhuman speed. A stun bolt sizzled past Ethan's shoulder, scorching the wall. He charged, slamming the mop into its front sensors with enough force to crack one. Sparks spat. The drone staggered back, legs flailing, but another appeared behind it, and another. 2 minutes. Luara cried, her voice strained as energy pulsed through her body into the panel. I need 2 more minutes. Ethan gritted his teeth and swung again, knocking one drone against the wall. Another leapt over it, claws flashing. Pain erupted across his shoulder as a bolt seared into him, the smell of charred fabric filling his nose. He dropped to one knee, breath ragged. Ethan. Luara's voice broke. She tore her hands free of the panel. The glow around her flickered, but her eyes blazed brighter than ever. She stumbled to him, catching his weight before he collapsed. You're hit. He forced a smile through the agony. I've had worse, mopping acid leaks. Her hands pressed against the wound, trembling. It's too deep. The shuttle won't matter if you bleed out. Go, he rasped. Finish the override. No, she said fiercely, her voice trembling with both fear and determination. There's another way. Colin's eyes widened. Luara, no, not with a human. It's never been attempted. What? Ethan demanded, clutching her arm as the world tilted. She looked into his eyes, her electric gaze shimmering. My species can transfer our regenerative ability to another. It creates a bond permanent, biological. Our lives become intertwined. If I heal you, Ethan, I bind myself to you forever. Ethan blinked, his heart hammering despite the blood loss. Forever? More intimate than marriage, she whispered. Closer than family. You would carry me inside you, as I would carry you. If one of us dies, part of the other dies too. Another bolt crackled against the corridor wall. Drones. Advancing. Colin shouted something about time, about inevitability, but the sound faded beneath the pounding in Ethan's ears. Luara's trembling hand cupped his cheek. I won't let you die, but this is your choice. Do you accept it? Ethan stared into those glowing blue eyes, into the impossible miracle that had grown from a severed hand, into the woman who had trusted him from her first breath back into life. He thought of his empty room, his forgotten life, the mop still clutched in his burned hand. Yes, he whispered, with all the conviction he had left. Do it. Luara leaned close, her forehead touching his, her hands pressing to his chest and shoulder. The glow from her body flared, flooding the corridor with living light. Energy surged into him, burning and soothing all at once. His wound. Knitted, flesh regrowing, as if time itself bent to her will. But more than that, Ethan felt her inside him, memories flashing, emotions blending. Her first life, her last breath in the explosion, the terror of rebirth. And she felt his Earth's collapse, the shame of wasted potential, the stubborn resilience that had carried him here. The bond locked into place with a final pulse that sent the drones reeling backward, sensors overloaded by the energy dot. When the light dimmed, Ethan rose to his feet. The pain was gone. His strength surged back, sharper, clearer than ever. He looked at Luara, and though no words passed between them, he knew her thoughts. And she knew his. "You're with me now," he said, voice rough but steady. "Always," she replied, her lips curving into the faintest, fiercest smile. Callan's voice broke the charged silence. "We have 30 seconds before the next wave of drones. Move." Ethan glanced down the corridor at the waiting shuttle bay doors, then back to Luara, still glowing faintly from the bond. For the first time since he arrived on Nexus Station, he felt more than just a janitor. He felt ready. Then let's finish this. A shuttle bay was chaos before they even reached it. Sirens howled, the decks vibrating with the heavy thrum of station lockdown procedures. Ethan's lungs burned as he sprinted. Collins' long strides clattering behind him. Luara pressed close at his side. Through their new connection, he could feel her urgency like a second heartbeat inside his chest, fierce, desperate, unwavering. The bay doors loomed ahead, a wide set of blast shutters, slowly sealing under emergency command. "Move," Ethan barked, adrenaline surging. He slid his maintenance badge across the panel, and for a moment his heart stalled, expecting rejection. But the red light blinked green. The override Luara had risked everything to trigger worked. The shutters jolted to a stop, opening just enough for them to slip through. Inside, the maintenance shuttle waited like a battered escape pod compared to the sleek corporate transports lined along the far wall. But it was theirs, and right now it was hope. They weren't alone. Ethan skidded to a halt, shoving Luara behind him. 3 Ventex security officers in black composite armor stood guard, their rifles already raised. Between them paced a figure, tall and gaunt, gray skin ridged like weathered stone. His narrow eyes locked on Luara with a mixture of fury and astonishment. "Impossible," the man hissed. "You're dead. I saw to it myself." Luara's grip tightened on Ethan's arm. "Director Mullen." Her voice was cold as steel. "You murdered me once. You failed." Mullen's lips curled. "Not failed, delayed. And this time, I'll make certain nothing remains." He gestured. The guards leveled their rifles. Ethan didn't wait. He charged. The bond had done more than heal him. His body felt sharpened, reflexes honed. He slammed into the nearest guard before the alien could fire, wrenching the rifle away and smashing the butt into the guard's faceplate. Bone cracked. Callan seized the moment, jabbing an elbow into another guard's throat, surprisingly brutal for the spindly scientist. Luara flung her hand toward the bay's control console, her bioelectric glow surging as alarms blared and fire suppression foam erupted from the ceiling. White spray coated everything, blinding the guards, clogging their weapons. Mullen snarled, drawing a sidearm, but Ethan was faster. He tackled the director into the foam-slick deck, muscles straining as he slammed him down. Mullen fought like a cornered beast, but Ethan drove a fist into his temple with all the rage of a man who'd scrubbed toilets for a corporation that murdered innocents. Mullen went limp, shuttle. Callan shouted over the cacophony. Ethan grabbed Luara's hand and pulled her up the ramp, the unconscious director's weapon clattering from his grip as they fled. The shuttle doors sealed with a metallic thud. Callan dropped into the pilot's seat, his 4 eyes flicking over controls as he-powered systems. The ship roared to life, shuddering as it tore free of docking clamps. Then they were in the void, the black expanse of space swallowing them. For a fleeting moment, silence, the kind that hinted at salvation. Then the alarms began again. 3 pursuit vessels, Callan reported grimly. Ventec cruisers. Armed. And fast. Ethan dropped into the co-pilot's seat, his shoulder brushing Luara's. Through the bond, he felt her fear, but also her fierce determination. "We don't outrun them in this crate," he muttered. "There," Luara pointed at the sensors. Ahead stretched a churning asteroid field, shards of rock tumbling endlessly around each other. "We can lose them in there." Callan's eyes widened. "That field is suicide in a ship this size." Ethan's hands were already on the controls. "Then it's a good thing I've got backup." Luara's fingers slipped over his, her glow flooding into him. The bond thrummed, sharpening his senses until the shuttle responded like an extension of his body. He could feel her presence in his veins, guiding his reflexes, showing him paths through the chaos. They dove into the field. Massive rocks spun past the viewport, so close Ethan swore he could hear them scrape the hull. He rolled the shuttle between two jagged asteroids, banking hard to avoid another that shattered into fragments ahead. The Ventec cruisers hesitated at the edge of the field, unwilling to risk pursuit. "They're holding," Callan confirmed. "But they'll wait us out." A chill ran through Ethan. They couldn't stay here forever. Luara gasped suddenly, her eyes glowing brighter. "I see it records, fragments of data still linked to my body's regeneration signature. The explosion that killed me wasn't an accident. Malin ordered it. He wanted my research destroyed when I refused to weaponize it." Ethan's jaw tightened. "We'll make that proof public. But first, we need a way out." Colin pointed to the navigational chart. "Only one path leads clear the asteroid. Breakers are opening a corridor, but it points directly into restricted Terran military space." Ethan stared at the glowing boundary markers on the display. Trespass there, and they risked Terran guns. Stay here, and Ventec would wait to pick them apart. Luara's hand found his, steadying. "Trust me," her thought whispered across the bond, her confidence flowing into him like warmth. "You're human, Ethan. Request asylum. Ventec won't dare follow." Ethan drew in a breath, his eyes fixed on the deadly corridor ahead. He was no longer just a janitor. Not anymore. He tightened his grip on the controls. "Then, that's where we're going." The shuttle burst from the asteroid field, hull shuddering as debris scraped past. For a heartbeat, Ethan thought they had made it. Then the proximity alarm screamed. A sleek warship loomed ahead, sharp-edged and bristling with weapon ports. The insignia of the Terran Confederation Navy gleamed across its hull. TCS Vigilant. Unidentified vessel. A stern voice boomed over comms. "You have entered restricted Terran military space. Power down immediately, and prepare to be boarded. Non-compliance will result in your destruction." Ethan's grip tightened on the controls. He felt Luara's fear spark down their bond, mingled with a trust that steadied him. He opened the comms channel. "This is Ethan Miller, Earth Citizen ID 4-7-2-9-1-Alpha. We're requesting asylum. I carry a Terran background, and we have evidence of Ventec crimes, illegal weapons research, assassinations, the deliberate destruction of Nexus Station's research wing." The silence stretched. Through the viewport, the Vigilance batteries tracked them with lethal precision. Callan muttered, "If they refuse, we're vapor." The comm crackled again. Identity confirmed. Ethan Miller, former engineering course, declared missing after Proxima incident. "You're cleared to dock under heavy guard," Ethan exhaled. "Copy that." He guided the shuttle toward the extending docking tube, metal jaws locking onto their battered hull with a resonant clang. Inside the Vigilant, 6 Terran Marines in polished combat armor waited with rifles raised. At their head strode Commander Pierce, silver streaks in his dark hair, medals gleaming on his chest. His eyes widened slightly when he saw Ethan. "Miller, I thought you were dead." "Not dead," Ethan said grimly. "Just cleaning up messes." Pierce's gaze swept to Luara. For the first time, Ethan felt her dread pour into him, sharp, raw fear of being caged, dissected, studied. She stepped closer to Ethan. Her fingers twining with his dot, Ethan squared his shoulders. This is Dr. Luara of the Nari. She's my partner. We've undergone a biological bonding. Separation could have fatal consequences. Pierce's eyes narrowed, calculating. Bonding? Linked at the cellular level, Ethan said, letting no hesitation touch his voice. Where she goes, I go. Pierce studied them both for a long moment, then gave a curt nod. Very well. You'll remain together under guard. Dr. Callan, you'll be questioned separately. They were escorted through the ship's pristine corridors to secure quarters spartan but clean. A viewport overlooking the asteroid field they had barely survived. Ethan's chest finally eased. For the first time since that lab, he let himself believe they might live. But Luara's fear still pressed against his thoughts. She sat on the edge of the bunk, eyes distant. They'll want my research. I'm not sure they'll care about me, only what I can give them. Ethan knelt before her, taking her hands. You're not just data, not to me, not to anyone who sees you for who you are. Her luminous eyes softened, the bioluminescent patterns along her skin flickering faintly. Since my rebirth, you've been my anchor, Ethan. The first face I saw. The first voice I heard. I feel you inside me now. Always. He felt it too, the pulse of her emotions, braided into his own heartbeat. A connection deeper than any human bond he'd ever known. We'll face this together. Always. Their moment fractured as the deck shuddered violently. Alarms blared across the Vigilant. Pierce's voice rang out over comms. Battle stations. Ventec cruisers inbound 3 ships, breaching restricted space. Luara staggered, clutching Ethan's arm. Through the bond, he felt her awareness extend outward like a ripple. Her eyes widened. Malin, he's alive. He's here. The room shook again as weapons fire rattled the hull. Colin activated the quarters terminal, pulling up an external feed. 3 Ventec cruisers encircled the Vigilant, weapons blazing. Their Kung channel carried Malin's voice, cold and venomous. Release the fugitives and the traitor scientist. Or burn. Ethan felt Luara's fury blaze through him, merging with his own. He touched her cheek, grounding her even as the world threatened to fracture again. They'll never take you back. Not while I breathe. She leaned into his touch, voice fierce. Then let's end them together. The ship shuddered once more, but this time Ethan didn't feel like prey. With the bond humming in his veins, with Luara's hand entwined in his, he felt unbreakable dot, and in the depths of that shared connection, something new flickered, an echo of possibility neither of them fully understood yet. Not just shared thoughts, not just emotions. A glimpse. A sliver of a future where humanity itself might carry Luara's gift, where survival met evolution dot. It terrified him. It exhilarated him. He looked at her, at the woman rebuilt from a single hand who had become so much more. And for the first time since the day Earth fell apart, Ethan Miller felt not invisible, not expendable, but necessary dot. The Janitor had become something else. And the galaxy was about to find out what.